Now, this is a very special episode of Rocket Motivation, but now I need to tell you from the beginning, you're going to need to listen very carefully to try to understand this podcast. Our guest is Christian Hadjipateras, and he was born with craniofacial abnormalities with cleft palate issues, as well as hearing loss. So his speech can be difficult to understand. This is a great show, though. He's got great inspiration. He's got a great story to tell. So you really need to listen to this one carefully. And also, when we recorded this, it was midnight in Greece where he is. And we also got the Zoom issue to deal with too. But I'm asking you, you don't want to miss this one. So you're going to have to listen carefully.
Having surgery was all I ever knew. It was almost as if I was thinking, well, what next? And I realized that even though my appearance had improved drastically, that I had a lot of work to do inside to feel truly content within myself. I still have my insecurities. We all have insecurities. I feel that my speech still holds me back sometimes. I'm still aware of my hearing loss. But the important thing is to always believe in yourself. And no matter what your circumstances are, no matter how tough things might get, just keep going. And things will get better, as they always do.
Hey everyone, this is Rod Cade, and welcome to this week's episode of Rocket Motivation. First, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Gat Creek, a wood furniture manufacturer designing and building incredible furniture, all done in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. Check out gatcreek.com. This week's guest was born with severe craniofacial abnormalities. He was born with craniosynostosis, where the bones of the skull fuse prematurely. He had bilateral cleft lip palate, hypertelorism, where the eyes are abnormally far apart. His hairline and eyebrows were set too high. And on top of all that, he has severe hearing loss. He's undergone around 30 surgeries and procedures on his face through age 3 months through age 21. He's going to tell you his inspiring story of growing up with and dealing with his condition.
3, 2, 1.
Christian Hadjipateras, welcome to Rocket Motivation.
Thank you very much for having me. Very happy to be here.
Hey Christian, first, tell us where you are now with your life. Where you are, your age, family, kind of what you do.
At the moment, my wife and I live in Greece. I'm 36 years old now. I was born in London, grew up there pretty much. Made the move to Greece about 10 years ago. And nowadays I'm focusing on my writing. I've been a writer from a very young age. And in more recent years, I've been focusing more on screenwriting. Because my passion for film is still as strong as ever.
Well, we're excited because you're our first international guest. So that's a big moment for Rocket Motivation. And I'm glad you came on because I know it's when we're doing this is midnight your time. So thanks for staying up so late.
It's fine for me because I go to bed late. I wake up early. No problem for me.
Well, so Christian, all right, from your birth, you had significant abnormalities and deformities of your face. So what's your earliest memory of realizing you look different than other people?
I would say one memory that is still quite clear in my mind. I must have been about 4 years old, and we were at a restaurant with my family and a few other friends and family. And I remember we were watching the magician show after lunch, which is what we used to do. And I noticed two boys who were sort of laughing and pointing at me. And I still remember running up to my mum in tears. So I would say that's my first real recollection. There were many occasions where I had to deal with comments and stares from other children. And, it was thanks to my parents who always told me that, I was exactly the same as everyone else. And, not to forget that. And as time went by, I learned in my own ways how to deal with those.
If you would talk about your early childhood through adolescence, how your condition affected your life.
Well, I would say up until the age of 13, all I ever remember was, going into hospital for an operation. I had my first one at 3 months old. So all I ever really knew was surgeries. So those first few years, it was all about, the next operation and preparing for that. I would say that the psychological impact really hit me once I started high school at about 13. And that's when I really didn't realize I was, different from the other children. And I think the fact that I saw my friends beginning to have their first experiences in life and, going to parties and doing things that teenagers do. And while I was there, I sort of felt I wasn't there, if that makes any sense. I felt I was looking at everyone, moving forward with their lives while I was still, stuck. And that sort of impacted me quite a lot. So I would say that my high school years was definitely the toughest of my life.
Tell us about that. I mean, I guess, you're in your high school years, you got self-esteem, confidence issues. I mean, what you went through, how did it affect you?
What was hardest for me was, like I said, seeing all my friends who I ran up with, in a way, sort of leaving me behind. And, they didn't mean to leave me behind, obviously, but it just felt that way because I had no confidence. I was also very aware of my hearing loss and my speech as well was, I felt they were both holding me back. And I think the fact that I didn't really open up to my family or friends at the time made things a lot worse. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to become a motivational speaker, because I want to be able to, tell people who might be in the situation I was once in that, opening up and, sharing your emotions, your feelings is so important. And, mental health itself was not really talked about at that time when I was at school. But nowadays it's much more openly discussed, which is a very positive thing.
Well, you say you didn't open up so much to your friends and family, but talk about your parents' influence on you and your development early in your life. I mean, were they supportive? How did that affect you?
Well, my parents, I'm a very lucky man that I was born into a very loving family. And, my parents left no stone unturned in getting the best for me medically. And when it came to the psychological side of it, they constantly instilled in me that I was the same as everyone else. And, I had to realize that. And, even when things got quite hard, during my teenage years, they were always there, as with my sister. The four of us, we went through a long journey together with the surgeries as well, and with the hard times I went through. But we stuck together, and you can never really overestimate the importance of family.
Well, hey, and let's talk about your surgeries. I know you had several, and I think you said your first one started at 3 months, and I think your last one was at age 21. But talk about the surgeries and the effect on your life, and kind of what you were searching for with all these surgeries.
Well, I mean, to try and be very brief, issues I was born with were very, very complex in the sense that they were a variety of issues in one. For example, I was born with a bilateral cleft, which is quite common, but in my situation, the cleft went all the way up, which made the whole thing even more difficult. And the doctors had actually never come across this complex issue. So I had quite a handful up until 9 years old, and then I had my first major one at 9 years old in Paris. And then there was a break of about 5 years. And then we started going to the US, and I had about 15 surgeries in Chicago to reconstruct my nose. And then I also had my last major surgery was in LA. And so overall, it was about, as you say, around 40. And the impact was understandably quite strong, both physically and mentally, because, when we went to the US, we would arrive there. 2 days later, I had the surgery, and then stay there for a week, go back to London, and then 2 months later, do the whole thing again. And it really did have a physical impact and a mental impact.
Well, tell us about that because so when you're having these surgeries, when you're looking at your
Yeah.
face, are you thinking, well, there's some improvement here?
Yeah, I think once I got to 18 and we started in the US to reconstruct my nose, I think that was when I first saw the signs of now I'm looking better. Because before that, it was all to repair the internal issues. But once I turned 18, that was when the external side started to be improved drastically.
And tell us about the mental or emotional impact these surgeries had on you.
Well, I mean, just the physical side, we're talking about surgeries of ranging from 6 hours to 12 hours. And doing that over the course of 2 years, it does hit you quite hard physically. But also you have to psych yourself up for every one as well. And, there were times where it was very difficult for the four of us, because not only were there a lot of surgeries that we had to do transatlantic flights all the time, and the whole combination was quite testing for us all. But at the end of it all, it was well worth it.
Right. You're having all these surgeries. At some point, I guess you get to your last one, which I think you were age 21. Is that right?
That was my last major one, yeah.
Okay. All right. So you have your last major surgery. What's going through your mind at that point? I mean, do you know that's going to be your last major surgery?
Yeah, I was well aware that, there was a feeling of excitement because I've been waiting for this day my entire life. I remember once the surgery was over, we had to stay in LA for 2 months. Once it was over and we went going back home to London, on the one hand, I felt elation, but on the other hand, because having surgery was all I ever knew, it was almost as if I was thinking, well, what next now? What do I do now? And at the same time, I didn't feel internally, I thought I would be ready to, start my life, and I would feel happy within myself, but I wasn't. And I realized that even though my appearance had improved drastically, that I had a lot of work to do sort of inside to feel truly content within myself.
And how did you start working on that?
It took a few years. I had a period between that last surgery and up until my mid-20s when I felt that I could finally start, living the life that my friends had been living. And in a way, I felt like I was trying to catch up with them. In a weird way, I was living my teenage years in my early 20s because I felt like I had missed out on my teenage years. I don't look back on that time with great memories, but it was all part of the learning curve and getting to the place where I felt happy within myself, which happened around my mid-20s.
Well, tell us about those early to mid-20s, though, then that you kind of lived your teenage years then. What did you do? I guess, what do you mean when you lived your teenage years then? What did you do that when you look back on it, you're not so happy about?
Well, I would say sort of silly things. I mean, I was at university. I wasn't working very hard. And I think when I say silly things, I mean if we were on a night out with friends, I would maybe have a bit too much, too many beers. I think there was sort of behavior that you would expect from a 17, 18-year-old and not, someone in their early 20s. So I sort of feel that I could have worked a bit harder and done a few more things right.
But you do graduate from university in England, right?
But that's right, Southampton.
How did you kind of break out of that kind of the funk that you were in where you were living your teenage years in your early 20s? How did you get out of that?
I sometimes believe that you have to you have to have a rough experience to sort of like finally find your way. And I spent a few months in New York as a trainee, and I was really excited about it. And unfortunately, it just didn't turn out the way I thought it would. It was not a happy time there at all. And after a few months, I thought I'd had enough, and I wanted to move here to Greece, which is where my family were living. And I think it was once I got here, I certainly felt a sense of now I'm happy. I started meeting new people. I mean, I've always been lucky because I had a very close circle of friends for my whole life, but it was good for me to sort of branch out and meet new people from different backgrounds. And I think that's what gave me a little confidence. So I think that experience in New York was in a strange way maybe something I had to go through in order to get to a place where I felt content.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess I mean, in a lot of ways, though, you're not different than everybody else. I mean, what I'm hearing is you got to experience some things in life to find your way.
Yeah. So with me, I think everything just happened a bit later.
Hey, tell us about, all right, so I know you hadn't told us about this yet, but I know you go out to LA where you spend some time. Tell us about
Yeah.
your time in LA and what you did and how that had an effect on your life.
Well, moving to LA was something I really had wanted to do ever since we went there for my last surgery. As I mentioned, we had to spend 2 months there. I thought LA was a great place, and I've always had a passion for film, and it was something I wanted to do. So I moved out there in my late 20s. I spent a couple of years there working for a distribution company. And at the same time, I was part of the writing team on this travel show, which was a great experience. And I got some experience in film pre-production. And I met some really good people out there, made some great friends. And, a couple of years of my life where I look back on with good memories.
All right, so I know you go back to Greece 2011.
I moved back here in 2015.
Okay. I know that you're married. Before you met your wife, take us back through how you dealt with dating.
Not very well. I didn't have not much in the way of confidence. It was never in my character to just approach a girl, and I found that very difficult in my teenage years and my early 20s. I didn't have much confidence. I had my first relationship when I moved back to Athens in 2015. That lasted for about a year and a half, and when that ended, I, was naturally not in a great place. But they say that things happen when you least expect it. My wife and I met a few months after that, and we met in August of 2017, and I proposed to her in December of the same year. So it was, a whirlwind romance.
Well, how nervous were you when you asked her to marry you, or is that something you knew the answer? You knew it was going to be a yes, or were you inside like, oh gosh,
Well,
come on?
She said to me, how did you ever think it would be anything other than yes? But it didn't feel that way before. I remember because we went to a resort about 2 hours away from Athens, and I was so nervous the whole way there. She was asking me what was wrong. Anyway, eventually, when we arrived there, it was a perfect setting because there was a lot of snow around and the sun was setting, and I thought now would be the time. And luckily for me, she said yes.
That's awesome. This is kind of a broad question, but how is living with your condition? I mean, how would you say it has shaped your life and the person that you are now?
I think from my experiences, it's made me perhaps appreciate things that other people might take for granted. I think that you can never know what it's like to be said at or have comments made to you because of your looks unless, of course, you experience it. And I think I have been through some hard times. We all go through difficult times, and I think my determination is to try and help others living with facial differences not have such difficult times. Because I think that in 2021 we shouldn't be talking about discrimination and other things like that. But we have come through. We come a long way as a society, but we do have a long way to go.
So, what have you learned about yourself through all this?
I would say that definitely learn to be more patient. Some people will say that you have been very patient because of what you went through growing up, and I still have a bit of a problem being patient when I should be. But I think I would say that we all have to, strive to have a society where tolerance and acceptance is the norm.
I want to go back on this because I'm not sure we've explored it enough, but I'm like growing up, once you realized that, there was something different about you. I mean, did you ever, and I know you've talked about, not having a lot of self-confidence and you were self-conscious. I mean, did you ever, just like try to hide and not be seen?
Oh yeah, I did. I think definitely socially, there were a lot of occasions during my teenage years where I didn't want to socialize because my confidence was so, it was non-existent. And there were also episodes where if I was walking down the street and I saw it coming towards me, I would probably keep my head down. And I think, there were quite tough experiences.
And then, then of course you've got the emotional and psychological aspect of that. I mean, growing up like that, who did you turn to? Because I would assume that was some devastating emotional issues you were going through. Who did you turn to, and how did you deal with it?
Well, I mean, in my teenage years, I would open up maybe to one or two of my close friends, but not very much. And it was my sister really who I first really opened up to. That wasn't until my mid-20s, and she knew me so well, and I think she knew I was having a hard time. She would never push me, but she would gently try and get me to open up. And once I did that, and I started opening up to other people, it just it makes you feel a lot better. It makes you feel that you're not alone. It's so important.
Well, so putting it all together, what is Christian's philosophy of life as we sit here today?
I would say I mean, as a society, I think that we need to, we still have a long way to go in terms of tolerance and acceptance and mental health. And I think we all need to do our bit to, to improve as a society.
Do you think, based on what you've gone through, that you look at life differently than others?
I would say, yeah. I think because of the experiences I've been through, I do look at things differently just because of what I have been through.
I know you're 36 now.
Yeah.
What's your plan for the immediate future and for the long term? Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years, 10 years?
Stephanie and I, we hope to one day start a family. I think that's one of our main aims. And I'm really hopeful that this screenplay that I'm working on will, make it from script to screen in a few years' time. I'm still very passionate about writing, so I hope that will happen.
So, what advice would you give to others that have craniofacial issues on on how to live your life and dealing with that?
Well, I think, as I said a few times, I think if you are in a situation where you have a facial difference, it's so important to be open about your feelings. I think nowadays the support that there is, the organizations around, it's hugely helpful because they offer emotional support, financial support, and also, most importantly, raising awareness to society about what people do go through. I'm very honored to be involved with a company than myself. I think it's the support is there now. Whereas when I was born, these organizations were non-existent. My parents had no one to relate to as well. But I would really say that if they are going through hard times, that they have to open up about how they're feeling, because it will make things much easier.
Right. Would you think that's one of the main things that people dealing with this is that they've got to open up and not keep it inside and open up, talk to people?
Absolutely, and also hold your head up high as well. That's something I did not do in my younger years. You should be proud about the way you look, not let anyone get you down.
Based on what you've been through, I mean, all the, everything you've overcome, what advice would you give to other people, not specifically that have craniofacial abnormalities, but just people that are going through tough times, that they need some inspiration? What advice, what inspiration can you give just the average Joe going through some tough times?
Well, I would say don't give up. If you want something enough, you'll get it. And when it comes to me, I don't want to create the illusion that I don't have my insecurities. Of course, I do. We all have insecurities. I feel that my speech still holds me back sometimes I'm still aware of my hearing loss. But the important thing is to always believe in yourself, and no matter what your circumstances are, no matter how tough things might get, just keep going, and things will get better, as they always do.
Some of these organizations you're talking about, I guess some like support for people with craniofacial abnormalities. What are some of those organizations?
Well, the first one I became involved with is in Chicago, and it's called Face the Future Foundation, and they provide support to local children who are born with craniofacial anomalies. They hold many events throughout the year to raise awareness of what these children go through. And once a year they do this annual gala to raise funds for the craniofacial center in UIC. So that's the first one. And I'm also involved with a wonderful organization called the Children's Craniofacial Association, which is based in Dallas. They offer similar support to children and their parents who have craniofacial issues. And also, I should mention that next month is actually Face Equality Week, which is a very important week where all these organizations, they get together to highlight the importance of children who are living and adults living with facial differences.
And if somebody wants to, get more information on you or, get you to speak, how can they find out more about you?
Go to my website, which is my name, Christian Hadjipateras.com. And I'm also available on Instagram and Facebook as well. So those are the main areas where they can find more about me.
Well, Christian, I do this on each guest. I like to give them the last word or the parting shot. Anything we hadn't talked about that that's inside of you that you think would be beneficial to our listeners?
Well, what I can say is from my part, I hope that people who have listened to this will find out a bit more about people living with facial differences. It can be very, very hard for them, and it can be difficult at times. And I really urge them to read up about Face Equality Week, which is coming up. I believe it's from May the 17th to May the 24th. So I really urge everyone to read up about that.
Well, Christian, thanks so much for coming on the show. This has been a great conversation, and I wish you the best.
Thanks very much. Thank you for having me. Great to talk to you.
Christian Hadjipateras' story is a great one of inspiration. Basically living your life through a prism of having facial abnormalities is tough, but he's handled it well. And one thing from his story that is similar to a lot on all the Rocket Motivation podcasts is this whole issue of asking other people for help and relying on them for help. That came through loud and clear in this, like it has on several stories, especially on this season 2 that we're wrapping up here, because this was episode 24. That's a common theme that runs through a lot of these stories, is being able to ask for help and to realize that you're not alone. So important. Like I said, that's a wrap for season 2, but don't worry, we'll be back with a season 3 that's as strong as seasons 1 and 2, probably in just a few weeks. Rocket Motivation is proud to be sponsored by Gat Creek. Smack dab in the middle of the Appalachian forest, this West Virginia furniture maker uses the best wood in the world to make the best furniture. The company builds furniture sustainability in America with a commitment to the health and safety of Gat Creek employees and customers and the environment we all share. Learn more about Gat Creek and what they do at gatcreek.com. Thanks for listening to the show. If you're interested in getting my book, Get Back Up, just go to Amazon and put in Get Back Up and my name, Rod Caden. It'll pop right up. I would love it if you would subscribe to the podcast and rate and review the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. I would really appreciate it if you'd share it with a friend. I would like as many people to hear my message as possible. Never give up and always get back up. And we'll see you next week.